There's a kind of fear that doesn't announce itself with screams or trembling hands, but with the sudden, absolute certainty that your life has just changed forever, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Elena knew that fear. She wasn't afraid of the dark alley, or the rain that soaked through her coat, or even the violence she'd just witnessed. She was afraid of the man whose eyes had locked onto hers in that split second, when she should have looked away. A man whose grip on her wrist felt less like capture, and more like a promise she didn't know if she wanted him to keep. If this story touches your heart, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Comment where you're listening from. And if you feel it was really worth it, consider becoming a member to get early access to upcoming stories. Your support makes all the difference. The rain had started 3 hours earlier, turning the November evening into a gray blur of water and shadow. Elena clutched her portfolio case closer to her chest as she hurried down Madison Avenue, her heels clicking against the wet pavement in a rhythm that matched her racing heart. She was late. Again. The gallery opening had started at 7, and it was already 8:30. Her first real showing as a photographer, her first chance to be seen as something more than just another art school graduate working double shifts at a coffee shop to pay rent. And she was going to miss it because the subway had decided tonight was the perfect night to break down. She cut through the alley between 5th and Madison, a shortcut she'd taken 100 times before. It was narrow, dimly lit by a single flickering street lamp, lined with dumpsters and fire escapes that dripped with rain. Elena had always felt safe in the city, even in its dark corners. She'd grown up in Brooklyn, learned early how to walk with purpose, how to make herself invisible when she needed to be. But tonight, something felt different. The air was heavier. The shadows seemed to breathe. She was halfway through when she heard voices. Low, urgent, angry. Male voices speaking in a language she didn't recognize. Italian, maybe, or something close to it. Elena's instinct told her to turn back, to take the long way around, but she was already so late. She pressed herself against the brick wall, hoping to slip past unnoticed, and that's when she saw them. 3 men stood in a tight circle near the far end of the alley. 2 of them wore expensive suits that looked wrong in this place. Too clean, too tailored. The 3rd man was on his knees, his face bloodied, his hands bound behind his back. One of the suited men held a gun, pressing it against the kneeling man's temple, while the other watched with cold detachment. Elena's breath caught in her throat. She should run. She should scream. She should do anything except stand there, frozen, watching what was about to happen. The man with the gun said something sharp, final. The kneeling man began to beg, his words tumbling over each other in desperate Italian. And then the other man, the one who'd been watching, turned his head. Just slightly. Just enough. His eyes found Elena's across the darkness of the alley, and the world stopped. He was tall, probably 6'2", with dark hair slicked back from a face that looked like it had been carved from marble by someone who understood cruelty and beauty in equal measure. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, eyes so dark they were almost black. He wore a 3-piece suit that probably cost more than Elena's rent for a year, and even from 20 feet away, she could feel the weight of his presence, the absolute authority that radiated from him like heat. Their eyes locked for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 2 seconds. 2 seconds in which Elena saw her entire future collapse into a single point of no return. 2 seconds in which the man's expression didn't change, didn't soften, didn't show anything except a calculating assessment that made her feel like a specimen under glass. And then he moved. He didn't run. He walked. Each step deliberate and unhurried, closing the distance between them while Elena's brain screamed at her legs to move, to run, to do anything except stand there like prey caught in headlights. But she couldn't move. She was paralyzed by those eyes, by the certainty in his movements, by the knowledge that running would only make things worse. His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist with a grip that was firm but not painful, possessive but strangely careful. Elena gasped, finally finding her voice, but before she could scream, he leaned in close enough that she could smell his cologne, expensive and dark, something with notes of leather and smoke and danger. "You saw too much," he said, his voice low and accented. Italian, definitely, with an edge that suggested violence was always just beneath the surface. "Now you're mine." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. She tried to pull away, but his grip tightened just enough to remind her that he was stronger, that he was in control, that whatever happened next was entirely up to him. Behind him, she could hear the other man, the one with the gun, saying something rapid in Italian. The man holding her didn't turn around. He kept his eyes locked on hers, searching for something, though Elena had no idea what. "Please," Elena whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. "I didn't see anything. I was just passing through. I won't say anything, I promise." Something flickered in his eyes, something that might have been amusement, or might have been contempt. It was hard to tell with a face that seemed incapable of softness. "Everyone says that," he replied. "And everyone lies." He glanced over his shoulder, said something quick and sharp in Italian. The other man lowered his gun, and the kneeling man collapsed forward with a sob of relief or despair. Elena couldn't tell which. "Dante!" the man holding her called out, still not looking away from Elena's face. "Take care of it. Not here." The one called Dante nodded, hauling the bloodied man to his feet and dragging him toward a black SUV parked at the mouth of the alley. Elena watched them go, her mind racing. Take care of it. She knew what that meant. She'd just witnessed something that would end with someone dead, and now she was complicit. Now she was a problem that needed to be solved. "What's your name?" the man asked, his tone casual, as if they were meeting at a cocktail party instead of a crime scene. Elena's throat felt tight. She considered lying, but what would be the point? He could find out anything he wanted about her. Men like this always could. "Elena," she said finally. "Elena Rossi." His eyebrow lifted slightly. "Italian?" She nodded. "Third generation. My grandparents came from Sicily." For the first time, his expression changed, a micro shift that might have been interest. "Sicily," he repeated, as if the word meant something specific to him. "Which part?" Elena's mind was blank with fear, struggling to remember the name of the village her grandmother had mentioned once or twice. "Corleone," she said, and then immediately regretted it when she saw his reaction. A smile, small and dangerous, curved his lips. "Of course it is." He released her wrist finally, but didn't step back. Instead, he reached into his jacket, and Elena's whole body tensed, expecting a gun. But what he pulled out was a business card, cream-colored with embossed lettering. He held it out to her. "Tomorrow, 9 a.m. This address. Don't be late." Elena stared at the card but didn't take it. "And if I don't come?" His smile widened, showing teeth that were perfectly white and perfectly threatening. "Then I come find you. And trust me, Elena Rossi from Sicily. You don't want that." He pressed the card into her hand, his fingers brushing hers in a way that sent an unwanted shiver down her spine. 9 a.m., he repeated. "Don't disappoint me." And then he was gone, walking back down the alley toward the black SUV with the same unhurried confidence, as if he owned not just the alley, but the entire city. Elena stood there in the rain, clutching the business card, her whole body shaking now that the adrenaline was starting to fade. She looked down at the card. No name, just an address in Tribeca and a phone number. No indication of what kind of business, No logo. Nothing. Just an address that she knew. Somehow, she would go to. Because men like that didn't make requests. They gave orders. And people who ignored those orders had a tendency to disappear. Elena's gallery opening was forgotten. She walked home in a daze, the rain soaking through her coat, her portfolio case hanging heavy at her side. Her apartment was a tiny studio in Alphabet City, 4th floor walk-up, no elevator, the kind of place where the radiator clanked all night and the neighbors screamed at each other in 3 different languages. But it was hers, and it was safe. And as she locked the door behind her and slid the chain into place, she felt the first real wave of terror wash over her. She'd witnessed a crime. She'd seen faces, heard names. The man had let her go, but only because he planned to deal with her later. The business card on her kitchen counter felt like a ticking bomb. She should call the police. That's what normal people did. But even as the thought crossed her mind, she knew she wouldn't. Because she'd grown up Italian, even if it was 3rd-generation Brooklyn Italian. She knew the stories. She knew what happened to people who talked. Elena peeled off her wet clothes and stood under the hot shower until her skin turned pink, trying to wash away the feeling of his hand on her wrist, the weight of his gaze, the certainty in his voice when he'd said those words. Now you're mine. What did that mean? Was she a prisoner? A target? Something else entirely? She didn't know, and the not knowing was almost worse than the fear. That night, Elena didn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, watching the headlights from passing cars paint shadows across the walls, replaying every second of the encounter in her mind. His face, God, his face. She'd photographed hundreds of faces, studied the human form in all its variations, learned to see the story that every face told. But his face was different. It was a study in contradictions, beautiful and brutal, refined and savage. The kind of face that belonged in a Renaissance painting of a fallen angel. She tried to remember exactly what she'd seen. The kneeling man, bloodied and begging, the gun pressed to his temple, the cold efficiency of it all. And then those eyes finding hers, calculating her worth in the span of a heartbeat. Elena had always believed she was invisible in the city, just another face in the crowd. But he'd seen her, really seen her. And now, she couldn't unsee him. At 8 a.m., Elena was already dressed, wearing the only professional outfit she owned, a black pencil skirt and white blouse that she usually saved for job interviews and funerals. She'd done her makeup carefully, trying to hide the dark circles under her eyes, trying to look like someone who had her life together instead of someone who'd spent the night contemplating whether she should flee the city. The business card sat on her kitchen counter, and she stared at it while drinking coffee she couldn't taste, trying to decide if she was brave or stupid for what she was about to do. The address led her to a building in Tribeca, all glass and steel and intimidating modernity, the kind of building where doormen wore uniforms and knew everyone's name. Elena stood across the street for 5 minutes, watching people come and go, all of them looking successful and purposeful and nothing like her. Finally, at 8:55, she crossed the street and pushed through the revolving doors. The lobby was marble and chrome, with modern art on the walls that probably cost more than Elena would make in her lifetime. The doorman looked at her with polite inquiry, and she held up the business card with a hand that only trembled slightly. He glanced at it, his expression neutral, and picked up a phone, spoke quietly into it, nodded, hung up. "Penthouse," he said, gesturing toward the elevators. "You're expected?" Of course she was. Elena stepped into the elevator, watched the doorman insert a key, and press the button marked PH. The doors closed, and she was alone with her reflection in the mirrored walls, looking pale and small and terrified. The elevator rose smoothly, silently, counting off floors. 20, 30, 40. Finally, it slowed and stopped, and the doors opened directly into an apartment that took Elena's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, offering a view so spectacular it didn't seem real. The space was enormous, minimalist in design but clearly expensive, with hardwood floors and furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. And standing by the windows, backlit by morning sun, was the man from the alley. He'd changed clothes, wearing dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms marked with scars and what looked like the edge of a tattoo. His hair was still slicked back, and in the daylight, Elena could see details she'd missed in the darkness. The slight crook in his nose suggesting it had been broken at least once, the thin scar cutting through his left eyebrow, the way he held himself with absolute confidence, as if the world existed solely for his convenience. "You came," he said, and there was something in his voice that sounded like approval. Elena stayed by the elevator, her hand near the button, ready to bolt if necessary. "You didn't give me much choice." He smiled that dangerous smile again. "There's always a choice, Elena. You chose to come. That tells me something." He gestured toward a leather sofa. "Sit. We need to talk." Elena didn't move. "Who are you?" He turned fully to face her, and the light from the windows cast his face in sharp relief, highlighting the harsh beauty of his features. "My name is Alessio Marchetti," he said, as if that should mean something. When Elena's expression remained blank, he added, "You really don't know, do you?" She shook her head. "Should I?" Alessio studied her for a long moment, and Elena felt exposed under that gaze, as if he could see through her professional clothes to the girl from Brooklyn who was way out of her depth. "Perhaps not," he said finally. "Perhaps that's better." He moved toward a bar cart, poured 2 glasses of something amber from a crystal decanter, held one out to her. "Grappa, from my family's estate in Sicily, near Corleone, actually." Elena took the glass because refusing seemed dangerous, but she didn't drink. Alessio noticed. Of course he noticed. And something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. "You think I'd poison you?" he asked. "If I wanted you dead, Elena, you'd already be dead." He took a sip from his own glass, proving the point. "What happened last night was unfortunate. Wrong place, wrong time. But it happened, and now we both have to deal with the consequences." "I told you I won't say anything," Elena said, finding her voice finally. "I meant it. I don't know anything about your business. I don't want to know anything. I'll forget what I saw." Alessio laughed, a sound without humor. "You really believe that? That you can just forget?" He moved closer, and Elena forced herself not to step back. "Let me tell you what you saw, Elena. You saw me conducting business. You saw me making a point to someone who needed that point made. You saw enough to identify me, to testify against me, to destroy everything I've built. Do you understand what that means?" Elena's grip tightened on the glass. "It means you should kill me." The words came out steadier than she felt. "Isn't that what people like you do? Tie up loose ends?" Alessio's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Elena thought she'd miscalculated, pushed too hard. But then he smiled again, and this time there was something almost genuine in it. "People like me," he repeated. "You have no idea what kind of person I am." He set his glass down on a side table and moved closer, close enough that Elena could smell his cologne again, that intoxicating mix of danger and refinement. "I could kill you," he said quietly. "It would be easy, efficient. No one would ever find the body." He paused, letting the threat hang in the air between them. "But I'm not going to do that." Elena's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Why not?" Alessio reached out, and Elena flinched, but he only took the glass from her hand and set it aside. Then his fingers lifted to her chin, tilting her face up to meet his gaze. The touch was gentle, almost tender, which somehow made it more terrifying than violence would have been. "Because you interest me," he said. "You're afraid, I can see that. But you came anyway. You stood there in my home, told me I should kill you, looked me in the eye like you weren't afraid to die. That takes courage. Or stupidity. I haven't decided which yet." His thumb brushed across her lower lip, and Elena's breath caught. She should pull away. She should run. But she was frozen by those dark eyes, by the heat of his body so close to hers, by the magnetic pull of someone who was clearly dangerous, and clearly interested, and clearly used to getting exactly what he wanted. "I'm offering you a choice," Alessio said. "You can leave. Walk out that door, go back to your life, and I'll make sure nothing happens to you. My word on it." "And the other choice?" Elena whispered. His smile was slow, predatory. "You stay. You work for me." Elena blinked, confused. "Work for you? Doing what?" Alessio released her chin and moved back to the windows, giving her space to breathe. "I need someone to document things. Events, people, places. Someone with an artist's eye who knows how to be invisible. Someone I can trust." He glanced back at her. "Or someone I can control. Haven't decided which yet with you either." Elena's mind raced. "You want me to be your photographer?" The absurdity of it almost made her laugh. "I photograph art galleries and coffee shops. I don't know anything about whatever it is you do." Alessio turned fully to face her. "You photograph what you see, what you feel. I looked at your website last night, Elena. You're good. Better than good. You see the story beneath the surface. That's what I need." He'd looked her up. Of course he had. Men like Alessio Marchetti didn't operate on blind faith. Elena felt violated and flattered in equal measure. "What if I say no?" she asked. "What if I take option one and walk away?" Alessio's expression didn't change. "Then you walk away. But you'll always wonder. You'll always look over your shoulder. You'll always remember the night a man grabbed your wrist in an alley and told you that you were his. And you'll wonder what might have happened if you'd been brave enough to stay." Elena hated that he was right. She hated that she was standing in this penthouse, actually considering working for someone who was clearly involved in organized crime, someone who'd threatened her life less than 12 hours ago. But she was considering it. Because Alessio was right about something else too. She was tired of being invisible. Tired of working double shifts for tips. Tired of having her art displayed in coffee shops where people looked at it while ordering lattes. Tired of being small in a city that demanded you be extraordinary. "If I stay," she said slowly, "I need to know what I'm getting into. I need guarantees." Alessio's eyebrow lifted. "You're negotiating?" There was approval in his voice again. "Good. Never accept the first offer. What guarantees do you want?" Elena took a breath, trying to organize her thoughts. "I want to know that I'm not helping you hurt people. I want my own boundaries respected. I want to be able to walk away if things get too dangerous or too wrong. And I want to be paid fairly." Alessio considered this, moving to the bar cart and refilling his glass. "I can't guarantee you won't witness things that make you uncomfortable. My business isn't clean, Elena. But I can guarantee that you won't be asked to participate in violence. Your job is to observe and document, nothing more. As for boundaries, tell me what they are, and I'll respect them. Walking away? We can discuss if that time comes. And payment? Name your price." Elena's mind went blank. Name your price. She had no idea what this kind of work was worth. She barely knew what her photography was worth. $5,000 a week, she said, picking a number that seemed impossibly high. Alessio didn't even blink. 10, he countered. Plus equipment, plus expenses, plus a guarantee of safety. You work for me, Elena. You're under my protection. No one touches you. No one threatens you. You're mine to protect now. There it was again. That possessive claim. Now you're mine. Elena should be terrified. Instead, she felt something else. Something warm and dangerous unfurling in her chest. Why me? She asked. There must be plenty of photographers in New York who'd jump at this opportunity. Alessio moved closer again. And this time, Elena didn't flinch. Because most photographers would ask too many questions or not enough. They'd either be too curious about my business or too stupid to survive it. You're smart enough to be careful and brave enough to be useful. And because when I looked at you in that alley, I saw someone who understood what it means to exist in the spaces between light and shadow. His hand lifted again, this time brushing a strand of hair away from her face, with a gentleness that seemed impossible from someone capable of such violence. You're an artist, Elena. You see the world differently. You look for beauty in unexpected places. That's what I need. Someone who can see my world and capture it not as crime, but as something else. Something real. Elena's throat was tight. And if I can't? If I see exactly what it is? Crime and violence and everything wrong? Alessio's fingers lingered at her temple, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheekbone. Then you see it honestly. I'm not asking you to lie. I'm asking you to see the whole picture, the reasons behind the violence, the code we live by, the family we protect. He paused, his eyes searching hers. Have you ever asked yourself why your grandparents left Sicily? What they were running from, or running toward? Elena had asked once. Her grandmother's face had gone hard, and she'd said only that some questions were better left in the past, where they belonged. Everyone has darkness, Elena, Alessio continued. The difference is, some of us stop pretending, we don't. His hand dropped away, and he stepped back, giving her space again. I need an answer. Stay or go. But once you decide, there's no changing your mind. Elena looked around the penthouse, at the view that stretched across Manhattan like a kingdom waiting to be conquered. She thought about her studio apartment with its broken radiator and screaming neighbors. She thought about her portfolio gathering dust because no gallery would give her a real chance. She thought about the way Alessio looked at her, like she was someone worth seeing, worth protecting, worth claiming. It was dangerous and wrong, and probably the worst decision she could make. I'll stay, she heard herself say. For now. Trial basis. 1 month. Alessio's smile was genuine this time, reaching his eyes and transforming his entire face from severe to something approaching beautiful. 1 month, he agreed. He extended his hand, formal and businesslike. Though there was nothing businesslike about the way his fingers wrapped around hers, or the way his thumb stroked across her knuckles. Welcome to the family, Elena Rossi. The word family sent a chill down her spine, but Elena pushed it aside. She'd made her choice. Now she had to live with it. Alessio released her hand and moved to his desk, pulling out a folder. Your first assignment is tonight. Charity Gala at the Metropolitan Museum. Black tie. I need documentation of who attends, who speaks to whom, who seems nervous or comfortable. Can you do that? Elena nodded. I've photographed events before. Not like this one, Alessio said. This is theater, Elena. Everyone performing their role. Your job is to see through the performance. He pulled a black credit card from his wallet and held it out. Buy what you need. Dress, shoes, whatever makes you feel confident. I want you invisible but present, capable of moving through that world like you belong there. Elena took the card, feeling its weight. I don't know that world. Then learn it, Alessio said simply. You have 8 hours. My driver will pick you up at 7. He moved toward the elevator, pressing the button. And Elena? Don't disappoint me. I don't give second chances. The elevator doors opened, and Elena stepped inside, her mind spinning. As the doors began to close, she caught one last glimpse of Alessio standing in his penthouse kingdom, watching her with those dark, unreadable eyes. And she realized with a jolt that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure that she wanted to see that look again, wanted to earn his approval, wanted to belong in his dangerous world. The elevator descended, and Elena watched her reflection in the mirrored walls. 24 hours ago, she'd been a struggling photographer trying to make it to a gallery opening. Now she was employed by a Mafia boss, holding his credit card, preparing to photograph New York's elite at a charity gala. Her grandmother would have recognized this story, would have understood the bargain Elena had just made, the price of ambition mixed with survival, mixed with something else, something darker and more compelling. Elena stepped out into the lobby, blinking in the bright morning light. The doorman nodded to her with new respect, as if he could sense she was different now, marked by Alessio's attention. She walked out onto the street, the black credit card heavy in her purse, and hailed a cab. As Manhattan streamed past the windows, Elena tried to process what had just happened. She'd agreed to work for someone who operated outside the law, someone dangerous, someone who looked at her like she was simultaneously prey and partner. But God help her. When Alessio had touched her face, when he'd said those words, "You're mine to protect now," something inside her had responded with a fierce, undeniable yes. Maybe it was the artist in her, drawn to darkness and complexity. Maybe it was the Brooklyn girl who'd always known that safety was an illusion and power was the only real protection. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe she was just tired of being afraid and invisible, and Alessio offered her a chance to be neither. The boutiques in Soho were the kind of places Elena usually avoided, the kind where sales associates looked at you with calculating eyes, determining whether you were worth their time based on the quality of your handbag. But armed with Alessio's black card and the memory of his command, "Buy what you need," Elena walked into the first expensive shop she saw with her head held high. The associate who approached, an elegant woman in her 40s, with perfect posture, sized Elena up in one swift glance. Elena could almost see the dismissal forming. Then she pulled out the black card. The woman's demeanor changed instantly. "Of course, madam. What can I help you find today?" Within 2 hours, Elena had been transformed. A floor-length gown in deep emerald silk that hugged her curves and made her skin glow. Heels that added 4 inches to her height and made her legs look endless. A clutch purse barely big enough for her phone and lipstick. Diamond earrings, borrowed from the store with a promise to return them, unless the gentleman would like to purchase them. The sales associate said it with knowing eyes, assuming Elena had a wealthy benefactor, which wasn't wrong exactly, just more complicated than she imagined. Elena stared at herself in the full-length mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. She looked sophisticated, dangerous, like someone who belonged in Alessio's world. The thought sent a thrill through her that she didn't want to examine too closely. She paid with the black card, watching the numbers scroll past without flinching, and left the boutique carrying bags that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "The driver will be at your address at 6:45. Wear your hair down." Elena's fingers trembled slightly as she typed back. "How do you know my address?" The response came immediately. "I know everything about you, Elena. Get used to it." She should have found that creepy, invasive. Instead, it felt like being seen, really seen, for the first time in her life. Elena spent the rest of the afternoon preparing with an attention to detail she usually reserved for her photography. She washed her hair twice, letting it dry in natural waves that fell past her shoulders. Applied makeup with careful precision, dark eyes, red lips, a look that was classic and timeless. Slipped into the emerald gown and heels, watching herself transform from Brooklyn photographer to something else entirely. At 6:45 exactly, her phone buzzed. Downstairs. Elena took one last look in the mirror, grabbed her clutch and the professional camera Alessio had specified she bring, and headed down. The black town car waiting at the curb looked exactly like what it was. Expensive, discreet, dangerous. The driver, a man in his 50s with military bearing and knowing eyes, opened the door without a word. Elena slid into the leather interior and found she wasn't alone. Alessio sat in the far corner, dressed in a tuxedo that looked custom-made, and probably was. His hair was perfect, his face freshly shaved, his presence filling the entire car with that magnetic authority Elena was beginning to recognize. He looked at her, his gaze traveling from her face, down her body, and back up with deliberate slowness. "You clean up well," he said, and there was heat in his voice that made Elena's skin flush. "So do you," she managed, her mouth dry. Alessio smiled, reaching across the seat to take her hand. He lifted it to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that felt both old-fashioned and intensely intimate. "Tonight you're my photographer," he said, "but to everyone else you're my companion. They'll ask questions. Who you are, where you came from, how we met. You tell them the truth, mostly. You're an artist. We met through mutual friends. You don't know much about my business. Understood?" Elena nodded. "What is your business exactly?" Alessio's thumb stroked across her knuckles, a gesture that was becoming familiar. "Import-export," he said with a slight smile. "Among other things, the less you know specifically, the safer you are. Focus on your job tonight. Photograph the interactions, the body language, the moments between moments. That's where the truth lives." The car glided through Manhattan traffic, heading uptown toward the Met. Elena watched the city pass, trying to calm her racing heart. She'd been to the Met dozens of times, but never like this. Never as someone's date. Never wearing a dress that cost more than her camera equipment. "Nervous?" Alessio asked. Elena turned to find him watching her with those dark, unreadable eyes. "Terrified," she admitted. "Good," he said. "Fear keeps you sharp. Just remember, you belong there as much as anyone else. More than most of them, actually. You create beauty. They just collect it." His hand tightened on hers briefly before releasing. "And Elena? Stay close to me tonight. There are people at this event who would love to use you to get to me." "Don't let them." The warning should have made her want to jump out of the moving car. Instead, it made her move closer to him on the seat, drawn by the promise of protection and the dangerous heat of his presence. Alessio noticed. Of course he noticed, and his arm came around her shoulders, pulling her against his side. "You're playing a role tonight," he murmured against her hair. "My companion, my photographer, my responsibility. Can you do that?" Elena nodded against his chest, breathing in the scent of him, expensive cologne, and something underneath that was just male warmth and danger. "I can do that." The Met was transformed for the gala, the grand entrance lit with elegant lighting, red carpet stretching up the stairs where photographers clustered and cameras flashed. Elena felt Alessio's arm tighten around her waist as they stepped from the car, and suddenly they were in the glare of attention. Cameras flashed. People turned to look. Elena heard whispers, speculation about who she was, This unknown woman on Alessio Marchetti's arm. She kept her expression calm, neutral, letting her body relax into Alessio's hold as they climbed the stairs together. Inside, the museum had been converted into something between an art gallery and a palace. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over guests in designer gowns and perfectly tailored tuxedos. Champagne flowed. A string quartet played softly in the corner. Elena had attended events like this before, but always as invisible help. The photographer no one noticed. Tonight, people noticed. They stared at Alessio with a mixture of respect and wariness, and at her with frank curiosity. "Smile," Alessio murmured. "You're supposed to be enjoying yourself." Elena smiled, letting herself lean into him slightly. "I'm working." "You can do both," he said, and there was amusement in his voice. He guided her through the crowd with practiced ease, stopping to exchange greetings with various guests. Elena noticed the pattern quickly. Politicians, business owners, society wives. They all treated Alessio with careful courtesy. No one was rude. No one was too familiar. There was a dance happening, invisible but precise, and Alessio led it effortlessly. "Mr. Marchetti," a voice called, and Elena turned to see a man in his 60s approaching, silver-haired and distinguished. "Councilman Brennan," Alessio replied smoothly. "Good to see you. May I introduce Elena Rossi? She's documenting the evening." The councilman's eyes sharpened with interest. "Rossi? Any relation to the Brooklyn Rossis?" Elena felt Alessio's hand press gently against her back, a reminder to stay calm. "Distantly, perhaps," she said. "My grandparents came from Sicily." Brennan nodded knowingly. "Sicily? Of course. Well, Ms. Rossi, make sure you get my good side." He laughed at his own joke and moved away. Alessio leaned close to Elena's ear. "He's on 3 different crime committees and takes payments from 5 different families, including mine. Remember his face?" Elena's heart raced, but she kept her expression pleasant. She raised her camera, beginning to photograph the crowd with professional efficiency. Through the lens, she saw what Alessio meant about theater. Everyone was performing, the politician glad-handing donors, the society wife pretending her husband wasn't obviously drunk, the business mogul whose company was under investigation, trying too hard to appear relaxed, and threading through it all, Alessio, commanding respect with nothing more than his presence. "There," Alessio said quietly, directing her attention to a cluster of men near the bar. "The one in the gray suit, Antonio Greco. He thinks he can move against my territory. I need documentation of everyone he speaks with tonight." Elena focused her lens, capturing Greco in profile. He was younger than Alessio, maybe 40, with the kind of aggressive confidence that suggested he'd never been told no. As she watched, he glanced across the room, and his eyes landed on Alessio. The look that passed between them was pure hostility. "He's looking at you," Elena murmured. Alessio's hand found the small of her back again, possessive and claiming. "Let him look. Let him see that I'm here with someone beautiful, unbothered by his posturing. It's all part of the game, Elena." She lowered the camera, turning to look up at him. "Is that what I am? Part of your game?" Alessio's expression shifted, something genuine breaking through the careful mask. "You're the only real thing here tonight," he said quietly. "Everyone else is playing their role. You're just being yourself." Before Elena could process that, a woman approached, stunning in a silver gown, her dark hair swept up to reveal a swan-like neck. "Alessio," she purred, "I didn't expect to see you here." There was history in her voice, intimacy and resentment mixed together. Alessio's expression cooled. "Juliana." I could say the same. His arm remained firmly around Elena's waist, Juliana's eyes flicked to Elena with barely concealed disdain. And who is this? The way she said it made Elena feel like a child playing dress-up. Elena Rossi, Alessio said, his voice carrying an edge of warning. My companion. Juliana's laugh was crystalline and cruel. Companion? How quaint. She moved closer to Alessio, her hand landing on his chest with familiar ease. We need to talk. Business. Alessio removed her hand with deliberate care. Then schedule a meeting. Tonight is personal. Something dangerous flashed in Juliana's eyes, but she smiled, sharp and bright. Of course. Enjoy your evening, Alessio, both of you. As she walked away, Elena felt tension radiating from Alessio's body. Ex-girlfriend? She asked, trying to sound casual. Alessio's jaw tightened. Ex-fiancé and business partner. Her family controls the ports. We have an arrangement that's purely professional now. The emphasis on now suggested it hadn't always been. Elena shouldn't care. This was a job, a transaction. But jealousy burned in her chest anyway, hot and unwelcome. Alessio must have sensed her tension because he turned her to face him, his hands on her waist, his eyes searching hers. Juliana is the past, he said quietly. A necessary alliance that became a mistake I've spent 3 years correcting. His thumb brushed along her ribcage, through the thin silk of her dress. You, Elena, you're something else entirely. The music changed, becoming slower, more intimate. Couples moved onto the dance floor. Alessio extended his hand. Dance with me. It wasn't a request. Elena set her camera on a nearby table and let him lead her onto the floor. His arm came around her waist, pulling her close, closer than was strictly proper. His other hand captured hers, holding it against his chest, where she could feel his heartbeat, strong and steady. They moved together, and Elena was surprised to find he was an excellent dancer, leading with confident precision. You're full of surprises, she murmured. Alessio's mouth curved. So are you. I expected you to run. You stayed. Maybe I'm stupid, Elena said. Alessio's hand tightened on her waist. No, you're brave. There's a difference. They turned, and Elena caught sight of Juliana watching them with narrowed eyes. She hates me, Elena observed. Alessio followed her gaze. She hates that I've moved on. That I chose someone who isn't part of this world. He looked down at Elena. You represent freedom to me. A life that exists outside the arrangements and alliances and blood obligations. Elena's breath caught. I'm not outside your world anymore. You pulled me into it last night. Alessio's expression grew intense. I gave you a choice this morning. You could have walked away. Elena met his eyes, letting him see the truth. No, I couldn't. You knew I couldn't. A slow smile spread across his face. Yes, I knew. The admission should have angered her, but instead it sent heat pooling low in her belly. He'd manipulated her, yes, but he'd also been honest about it. There was something refreshing in that kind of directness, even when it was dangerous. The song ended, and Alessio led her off the floor, his hand never leaving the small of her back. They spent the next hour working the room, Alessio introducing Elena to what felt like half of New York's power structure, while she photographed discreetly, capturing the moments Alessio indicated were important. She was good at this, she realized, good at fading into the background when necessary, at reading body language, at anticipating the shot before it happened. And she was good at playing her role, smiling when appropriate, staying quiet when needed, letting Alessio take the lead while observing everything. By 10 p.m., Elena's feet were killing her, and she'd filled 2 memory cards with images. Alessio must have noticed her discomfort because he leaned close. Ready to leave? Elena nodded gratefully. They made their excuses. Alessio's hand possessive on her waist as they navigated toward the exit. They were almost to the door when Antonio Greco stepped into their path. "Marchetti," he said, his voice carrying just enough volume to draw attention. "Leaving so soon?" Alessio's expression remained neutral, but Elena felt his body tense. "Greco, enjoying the evening?" Greco's smile was sharp. "Very much. Though I'm curious about your companion. I don't believe we've been introduced." He extended his hand toward Elena. Alessio's arm tightened around her. "Elena Rossi. This is Antonio Greco. Antonio. Ms. Rossi is my personal photographer, and under my protection." The warning in those last words was unmistakable. Greco's eyes glittered with malice. "Rossi. Sicily." Elena nodded, her throat tight. Greco's smile widened. "Interesting. I knew some Rossis from Corleone. Before they disappeared, that is. Family trouble, I heard." Elena's blood ran cold. Alessio moved slightly, positioning himself between Elena and Greco. "Careful, Antonio," he said quietly. "You're at a public event. Let's keep things civilized." Greco held up his hands in mock surrender. "Of course. Just making conversation. Enjoy your evening, both of you." As they walked away, Elena's mind raced before they disappeared. What did that mean? Had Greco been threatening her? Warning her? Alessio guided her out to where the car waited, and the moment they were inside, Elena turned to him. "What did he mean about my family?" Alessio's jaw was tight. "I don't know, but I'll find out." His hand found hers, gripping firmly. "No one threatens you. Not while you're under my protection." The ride back to Elena's apartment was tense and silent. Alessio's anger was palpable, controlled but simmering just beneath the surface. When the car pulled up outside her building, Alessio surprised her by getting out. "I'm walking you up," he said, leaving no room for argument. Elena's studio had never felt smaller than when Alessio stepped inside. He filled the space completely, his presence making everything else seem insignificant. He moved to the windows, looking out at the street below with the practiced eye of someone always assessing threats. "I don't like Greco knowing where your family is from," Alessio said finally. "It gives him leverage." Elena set her camera down carefully. "Are you saying I'm in danger because I work for you?" Alessio turned to face her. "You were in danger the moment you walked into that alley. At least now you have protection." He moved closer. "I need you to trust me, Elena. Can you do that?" Elena looked up at him, at this dangerous man in her tiny apartment, and realized she already did trust him, at least more than she should. "I don't know you," she said. "Not really. I don't know what you do, who you hurt, what lines you've crossed." Alessio's hand lifted to her face, cupping her cheek with surprising gentleness. "No, you don't. And maybe that's better. Maybe you should stay in the light, Elena, and let me handle the darkness." But Elena shook her head, leaning into his touch despite herself. "I'm not fragile. I grew up in Brooklyn. I know the world isn't clean." Alessio's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. "Knowing and living it are different things." His eyes searched hers. "I want to keep you separate from the worst of it. Is that so wrong?" Elena's heart hammered. "Why? Why do you care?" Alessio's expression shifted, vulnerability flashing across his face before the mask returned. "Because when I look at you, I see something I thought I'd lost. Hope. Possibility. A future that isn't just power and violence and empty victories." The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Elena's hands came up to rest on his chest, feeling his heart beating as hard as hers. "Alessio." His name on her lips seemed to undo something in him. He pulled her close, one hand sliding into her hair while the other wrapped around her waist. "Tell me to leave," he said, his voice rough. "Tell me this is just business, that you don't feel this too." But Elena couldn't, because she did feel it. This dangerous attraction, this pull toward someone who should terrify her, but instead made her feel alive in a way she never had before. "I feel it," she whispered. Alessio's control snapped. He kissed her, and it was nothing like Elena had imagined. It was hungry and demanding and desperate, like he was trying to consume her, to claim her, to make her his in every possible way. Elena kissed him back with equal fervor, her hands fisting in his tuxedo jacket, pulling him closer. They stumbled backward, Alessio's hands roaming over the silk of her dress, finding the zipper and sliding it down with practiced ease. The dress pooled at her feet, leaving Elena in nothing but heels and the delicate lingerie she'd bought that afternoon. Alessio pulled back just far enough to look at her, his eyes blazing with heat and possession. "Beautiful," he murmured. "So damn beautiful." His hands traced her curves, reverent and claiming at once. Elena's fingers worked at his bow tie, his shirt buttons, desperate to feel his skin against hers. When she finally pushed the shirt off his shoulders, she froze. His torso was a map of violence. Scars crisscrossed his chest and abdomen, some old and faded, some relatively recent. And covering his right side, flowing from shoulder to hip, was an elaborate tattoo of a phoenix rising from flames, so detailed and beautiful it took her breath away. Elena's fingers traced the ink, following the bird's wings. "It's stunning," she whispered. Alessio caught her hand, his expression guarded. "It covers the worst of the scars," he said. "From when I was younger, stupider." Elena looked up at him. "It's not covering anything. It's transforming it, making beauty from pain." Alessio's eyes darkened. "You see things others don't." Elena smiled. "I'm a photographer. I'm trained to see." She kissed the phoenix, feeling Alessio's sharp intake of breath. "I see you, Alessio. Not the boss, not the threat, not the role you play. I see you." Something broke in his expression, and he lifted her, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her to the bed. What happened next was intense and overwhelming, and nothing like Elena's limited experience had prepared her for. Alessio was demanding, but attentive, taking control, but always checking that she was with him, that she wanted this. And Elena did want it, wanted him, wanted to surrender to this dangerous connection that she knew was going to change everything. Afterward, they lay tangled in her sheets, Alessio's fingers tracing idle patterns on her bare shoulder. "This complicates things," he said finally. Elena laughed softly. "Wasn't it already complicated?" Alessio smiled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Fair point." He was quiet for a moment. "I meant what I said earlier. You're under my protection now. That means something in my world, Elena. It means you're mine, and anyone who touches you answers to me." The possessive claim should have bothered her. Instead, it made her feel safe in a way she never had before. "And what am I to you?" she asked. "Beyond someone you protect?" Alessio turned to face her, his eyes serious. "I don't know yet, but I want to find out." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and Elena woke in the early morning light to find Alessio already dressed, sitting on the edge of the bed and watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "You have to go," she said, understanding without being told. Alessio nodded. "I have business to handle. Greco's threat last night was deliberate. I need to send a message." Elena sat up, clutching the sheet to her chest. "What kind of message?" Alessio's expression hardened. "The kind that ensures he never threatens you again." Elena's stomach clenched. "Alessio, I don't want anyone hurt because of me." He leaned forward, cupping her face in both hands. "This isn't because of you. This is because he challenged me, threatened what's mine. In my world, that can't go unanswered." He kissed her forehead. "Stay here today. Don't go out alone. I'll have someone watching the building." The words were meant to be comforting, but only emphasized how much danger Elena had put herself in. After Alessio left, Elena lay in bed, replaying the past 36 hours. 2 days ago, she'd been nobody, invisible, struggling. Now she was sleeping with a Mafia boss, under his protection, part of his world whether she wanted to be or not. Her phone buzzed with a text. "The photos from last night were excellent. I'll need you again this weekend. Different event." She stared at the message, at the casual way Alessio was weaving her deeper into his life. She should be terrified. She should pack a bag and disappear. Instead, she texted back, "What should I wear?" His response came quickly. "Something that tells the world you belong to me." Elena's breath caught at the blatant possessiveness, at how much she liked it despite knowing she shouldn't. The next 3 weeks fell into a pattern. Elena photographed Alessio's world, charity events, business dinners, private meetings where she was the only outsider allowed in the room. She learned to read the politics of organized crime through her lens, understanding the hierarchy, the alliances, the barely concealed hostilities. And every night, Alessio came to her, sometimes to her apartment, sometimes bringing her to his penthouse. They talked for hours, Alessio sharing pieces of his history, his rise to power, the empire he'd built, and the prices he'd paid for it. Elena shared her own story, too. Her family's immigration, her grandmother's silence about the past, her dreams of being more than invisible. Alessio listened with genuine interest, asking questions, making her feel seen in ways that went beyond the physical. The sex was intense, passionate, sometimes rough, and sometimes achingly tender. Alessio was a demanding lover, but an attentive one, learning her body with the same focused intensity he brought to everything else. And afterward, he held her like she was something precious, his fingers tracing her skin while he murmured Italian endearments she was starting to understand. But there were things Elena didn't see, couldn't see. The business Alessio conducted away from her, the decisions he made, the orders he gave. She knew violence happened, saw evidence in the careful way certain topics were avoided, in the respect tinged with fear that people showed Alessio. But he kept that part of his world separate from her. And Elena was grateful and guilty in equal measure for the willful blindness. Then everything changed. Elena was in her apartment editing photos when her door burst open. She jumped up, reaching for her phone, but 3 men were already inside. One of them was Antonio Greco, his smile sharp and triumphant. "Ms. Rossi," he said pleasantly, "we need to have a conversation." Elena's heart raced. "Get out." "I'll scream." Greco laughed. "Scream! The building is empty. We made sure of it." His men moved closer, blocking the exits. "Alessio Marchetti thinks he can protect you. He's wrong. You're going to help us send him a message." Elena's mind raced, remembering everything Alessio had taught her about his world, about power and leverage and survival. "I'm just his photographer," she said, trying to sound scared and small, though terror was making her voice shake anyway. "I don't know anything about his business." Greco moved closer, his hand shooting out to grab her wrist exactly where Alessio had that first night. The parallel was deliberate and cruel. "You're more than that now. You're his weakness, and we're going to use you." Before Greco could do more than tighten his grip, the windows exploded inward. Glass shattered everywhere, and suddenly the room was full of men, Alessio's men, moving with military precision. Greco released Elena, reaching for a gun, but one of the men was faster, disarming him with brutal efficiency. And then Alessio was there, stepping through the broken window from the fire escape, his face a mask of cold fury that was more terrifying than anything Elena had ever seen. "You touched her," Alessio said quietly, moving toward Greco with predatory grace. "I told you what would happen if you touched her." Greco tried to speak, to negotiate, but Alessio's fist connected with his jaw, sending him sprawling. "Take him," Alessio ordered his men, "and make sure everyone knows what happens when they threaten what's mine." Greco was dragged out, still trying to plead, while Alessio turned to Elena. His expression shifted instantly from cold fury to concern. "Are you hurt?" Elena shook her head, unable to speak, adrenaline and shock making her tremble. Alessio pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. "I'm sorry," he murmured into her hair. "I should have anticipated this, should have protected you better." Elena clung to him, finally finding her voice. "You did protect me." "Your men were watching." Alessio pulled back to look at her face, checking for injuries with gentle hands. "Always. I always have someone watching. I told you, you're mine to protect." The possessive claim, which had seemed romantic before, now carried the weight of reality. Elena was his, marked by his attention, a target because of his protection. "What's going to happen to Greco?" she asked, though part of her didn't want to know. Alessio's expression hardened again. "He broke the rules. He'll face the consequences." Elena's stomach turned. "You're going to kill him." It wasn't a question. Alessio didn't flinch from the accusation. "Yes." The single word hung between them, honest and brutal. Elena pulled away, wrapping her arms around herself. "Because of me." Alessio caught her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "Because of the rules that keep this world from descending into chaos. Because he knew what he was doing when he came here. This isn't on you, Elena. This is on him." Elena wanted to believe that, but the guilt was crushing. "I can't do this," she whispered. "I can't be the reason people die." Alessio's grip tightened. "You're not the reason. I am. My choices, my power, my world. You're just caught in it now." The words should have been cold comfort, but they weren't comfort at all. Elena looked around her destroyed apartment, at the shattered glass and overturned furniture, at the evidence of violence in her safe space. "I want out," she said. "I want to go back to before I saw you in that alley." Alessio's expression didn't change. "You can't. Neither of us can. The moment our eyes met, everything changed. You know that." He was right. And Elena hated it. Hated that she'd made choices that led here, that she'd let herself fall for someone who solved problems with violence, that she'd become someone worth targeting. "I need time," she said finally. "I need to think." Alessio nodded slowly. "I'll give you time. But Elena, understand this. You're still under my protection whether we're together or not. That doesn't change. You're still mine, even if you walk away from everything else." The words should have angered her, but instead, they made her want to cry. Because part of her didn't want to walk away. Part of her wanted to stay in Alessio's dangerous world, wanted his protection and his passion and his fierce claim on her. But could she live with the cost? Alessio kissed her forehead, lingering for a moment, as if memorizing the feel of her. "My men will clean this up and secure the building. I'll have you moved to a safer location." Elena nodded numbly. As Alessio moved toward the door, she called out, "Wait!" He turned, hope flashing across his face. Elena met his eyes, trying to find the words for what she felt. That first night in the alley, you said I saw too much. You were right. I saw who you really are. Not just the violence, but the man beneath it. The one who creates beauty and destroys threats, and protects fiercely what he claims as his. I saw you, Alessio, and that's what terrifies me most, that I saw you and stayed anyway. Alessio's expression softened. And I saw you, Elena. Someone brave enough to look at darkness and not flinch. Someone who sees beauty in broken things and believes they can be whole again. I saw you. And I knew you were mine before you knew it yourself. He paused at the door. Take your time. Think. But know that I'll be waiting. Because you're not just mine to protect, Elena. You're mine to love. And I don't give up what I love. Then he was gone, and Elena was left in the wreckage of her apartment and her carefully constructed life, trying to decide if love was worth the price of living in shadows, if passion could justify complicity, if being seen and claimed and fiercely protected by a dangerous man was worth the risk of losing herself completely. She looked at her camera, at the tool that had brought her into Alessio's world, and knew that whatever she decided, she was already changed. The girl who'd walked into that alley 3 weeks ago was gone. In her place was a woman who understood that sometimes the greatest danger wasn't the darkness itself, but how much you craved it once you'd tasted it. And Elena had tasted it, in Alessio's kiss, in his touch, in the fierce possession of his gaze. Now she had to decide if she was brave enough to dive in completely or strong enough to walk away. Either way, she would never be invisible again. Either way, she belonged to him, body and soul. Whether she chose to accept it or not,